Noam Chomsky is well known for some of his works on politics, his writings concerning the media, and the idea that we have manufactured consent, that a lot of our political opinions basically manufactured by those in power. So there's this video that I wanted to look at and analyze, and keep in mind as we watch it that media very rarely is showing the problems of everyday people. It doesn't cover the fact that you have millions of people who die every year without health insurance. It oftentimes is focusing on celebrities and consumerism and lavish lifestyles and sensational stories. So let's go ahead and just check out this video, and then we'll analyze just the accuracy of it.
Propaganda. Many use the word when talking about countries like North Korea, Kazakhstan, Iran. Countries viewed as authoritarian through the lens of the Western media. Press freedom, freedom of thought. People use those terms when talking about countries like the United States, France, Australia, democracies. In 1988, Noam Chomsky co-authored a book with Edward Herman called Manufacturing Consent. It blasted apart the notion that media acts as a check on political power, that media inform the public, serve the public, so that we can better engage in the political process. In fact, media manufacture our consent. They tell us what those in power need them to tell us so we can fall in line. Democracy is staged with the help of media that work as propaganda machines. Media operate through 5 filters. The first has to do with ownership. Mass media firms are big corporations. Often they're part of even bigger conglomerates. Their end game, profit. And so it's in their interests to push for whatever guarantees that profit. Critical journalism takes second place to the needs and interests of the corporation. The second filter exposes the real role of advertising. Media costs a lot more than consumers will ever pay. So who fills the gap? Advertisers. And what are the advertisers paying for? Audiences. And so it isn't so much that the media are selling you a product, their output. They're also selling advertisers a product, you. How does the establishment manage the media? That's the third filter. Journalism cannot be a check on power because the very system encourages complicity. Governments, corporations, big institutions know how to play the media game. They know how to influence the news narrative. They feed media scoops, official accounts, interviews with the experts. They make themselves crucial to the process of journalism. So those in power and those who report on them are in bed with each other. If you want to challenge power, you'll be pushed to the margins. Your name won't be down. You won't be getting in. You've lost your access. You've lost the story. When the media, journalists, whistleblowers, sources, stray away from the consensus, they get flagged. That's the fourth filter. When the story is inconvenient for the powers that be, you'll see the flag machine in action, discrediting sources, trashing stories, and diverting the conversation. To manufacture consent, you need an enemy, a target. That common enemy is the fifth filter. Communism, terrorists, immigrants. A common enemy, a boogeyman to fear helps corral public opinion. 5 filters. One big media theory. Consent is being manufactured all around you, all the time.
When it comes to the media, they oftentimes just do not cover in events that are really important to the average person. So, for example, when it comes to campaigns, oftentimes they're focusing more on what the candidate had for breakfast, or they're focusing more on trivial matters like when they're going to drop out of the race or why there's members of their staff that are leaving, instead of oftentimes focusing on the issues that the candidate is trying to make a central part of their campaign. Whether you like him or not, an example of this is Bernie Sanders. Media would focus more on when he was going to endorse Hillary, and he'd have these big events where he's talking about poverty with Native Americans and the reasons behind that, how there should be new relationships with the federal government and these Native tribes, and the media wouldn't really cover it. All of these large press organizations, they had people there, but they would just focus again on the campaign. With the Occupy Wall Street movement, the media outlets did everything that they could to really try to discredit those people protesting. And you have to ask, like, why do they do that? Well, it's simple. It's because the people who usually own these companies, they're extremely wealthy. They don't want to see big change. They want to do everything they can to preserve their wealth and to pass as much of it as possible onto their children. And so there's a lot of accuracies with that video. Keep in mind, here's a few statistics. In 1983, the largest 50 corporations owned 90% of the media. Today, with different mergers and takeovers, 6 corporations control 90% of the media. So you can see just in the last 37 years, it's been a massive shift. And so really when it comes down to it, I recommend alternative media sources, a lot of YouTube videos, for example, a lot of YouTube channels. I like Kyle Kulinski pretty well. The Young Turks are all right. Oh, another good example of this. So Cenk ran for Congress, and there were corporate media outlets, and there were some Democrats doing everything they could to try to discredit him, likely because they didn't like the light that he was shedding on some issues, money and politics especially. And so they ran this hit piece about how years ago he had apparently said something that was sexist. And he later said, yeah, I'm sorry for that. I was younger. I've tried to do better. I've tried to change. But they focused so much time and so much effort on this. A lot of people would objectively argue that it's because the types of things he was advocating for and with his following, he was going to be a huge threat to some extremely wealthy and some extremely powerful people. So really, if the media was just trying to inform us all, you know that they would be covering issues that a lot of people care about. They don't talk about the impact of trade agreements on our economy. They don't talk about the amount of money that specific politicians are receiving. They should. But the thing is, a lot of the campaign contributors are also owners of these media networks. They don't talk a lot about the idea of how much money we have in Social Security, and they're not always honest with people on the fact that you have a lot of powerful people wanting to cut it. And so again, just keep in mind, media is not always reliable. Now that's not to say that Fox and CNN are the same level of credibility. They're not. Fox is more of a propagandist outlet, but I would be wary if you're on the left of outlets like CNN and MSNBC, and realize that they aren't always going to provide an honest depiction, and they're not always going to be in the best interest of working class everyday people. Finding good independent podcasts and stations can definitely be a solution there.